Hi everyone. Well, here I am for my first of many Friday sessions. It's Friday evening. I've had a heck of a day battling technology. Boy, it is amazing how technology has infiltrated our life. There was a poet called Gibran, and he said, luxuries move in your house as a guest, but then they end up being master. Wow, is that the truth with technology? You, you misplace your iPhone or your smartphone, the internet goes down, the electric goes off. We're at a total loss. It's amazing. And everything's in this cloud or that cloud. And it's drawn us so much away from the nature of man to this slavery of information and dependency. Here, I'm telling you this, and we're on YouTube. There's a true beauty to all this because I do research now I could have never done before because of the internet. And we have so many things. I love YouTube. I love multiple YouTube channels, and I get such good information and listen to great speeches and everything else. But I think it is something that we have to look at and control. Now, I have been getting a lot of Instagram and on my sites, even the YouTube sites, asking me, when's season 4 coming? Well, it isn't going to come. ID and I, it was a great experience, but they were sort of changing format. And so my show, The Coroner, I Speak for the Dead, is now over on Amazon Prime. And I guess that's part of their marketing strategy. I'm still doing work in media and on TV. I just finished a project with Big City Productions and Laurie Rothschild, and that will be on sometime in the spring. And it is a fascinating historical piece on the autopsy of John Wilkes Booth. That's the man in those other countries you may not know that assassinated President Lincoln on a Good Friday, just prior to Easter and just after Lee had surrendered to General Grant. It was a tragic moment, and it was I guess that was the exclamation part at the end of the American Civil War to end slavery. So if you've missed any of the episodes, you can find them in Amazon Prime, but I'm off to some new projects. One of them is planned to be a very broad, in-depth, multi-segmented documentary on the addiction crisis in America. We don't have an opioid crisis, we have an addiction crisis. And I want everybody to see it through the multifaceted eyes of multiple disciplines, multiple therapies, and also what I see on a daily basis in addictive behavior and the physical issues of addiction from medical legal death investigation side of things, the patterns the dead are using to speak to me. There was, well, there still is, a writer, Rick Warren, and he wrote a book called The Purpose-Driven Life, and he said that for those who have influence, the reason to have influence, rather, is to help those who have none. Well, I certainly have gained a lot of influence, really within 6 years of doing different things on TV concerning death and dying, the issue of medical legal death investigation, and the study of homicides, that type of thing. It's gained me influence, and I give speeches broadly all over the place. I'm doing a lot of writing and research right now. And I'm going to tell you about some of these projects as the year goes on, 2020. There won't be a season 4 with ID, but there are new projects coming up. One of them is the documentary. I just told you about the one that is being filmed. It will probably be out. I would say at the beginning of the year. I'll let you know when it is going to be on TV. But that's historical in nature. I'm also working with someone out in Los Angeles on a fictional character, which is based loosely on my life, which went through police work with 385th Military Police, 52nd CID, and that was in Europe, and then I came back here, worked as a funeral director, and then went back into forensics. I actually started medical legal death investigation before it was a codified subsection of forensic study. Now there's national certifications like ABMDI and all these different certifications in that field of forensic study. It's important to remember that forensics itself, because everybody, there are many people, let's put it that way, that write me and say, oh, I want to be in forensics, but they don't really understand what forensics is. Forensics is science applied to law. You can be a pathologist, but you're not a forensic pathologist unless you understand the intricacies of documentation and how it applies to law and chain of evidence, and you can relate to different traumatic patterns and understand patterns even of the way people tie knots when they hang themselves. You know, it's just a very individualized subsection of pathology. That's obvious. Like now, there's a great debate on Epstein and his so-called prison suicide. So as we go through this year, write me, and I'm going to try to get back to as many as I can. My daughter always says, Dad, you can't do it all. And I will try to answer some of the responses and get back to people. It is a very busy time for me. If I rattle them off, what I have is trying to develop a new show. I'm expanding the forensic center to include a forensic center, a research center, a training center, and also an education center in specific fields in one building, which is surrounded by historic buildings here in the Harrisburg area. And I'll show you that as we go along, that what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get people to think out of the box. Rather than look at problems like addiction and say, oh, we have a drug to take care of that, I would rather have us look at various therapies and the overall picture of addiction, and that's really what the documentary is going to be about. Because addiction isn't drugs. Addiction is behaviors we do over and over again that consistently have negative results in our life. And that's what we have to look at. And again, that comes down to how we handle a lot of the research we do today. Most of the research dollars they're controlled by two entities. One of them is government, and the other one is industry, where they can research something, patent it, and then market it. And the large part of pharmaceutical solutions are exactly that. They're pharmaceutical solutions that can be patented and marketed and make billions of dollars, but we don't often compare them to other alternative therapies, which they, of course, will say are non-scientific because there's not enough peer-reviewed journals that have scientific proof in them. Well, believe me, some of those studies aren't very scientific if you break down the inferential statistics, the way they jiggle the numbers. Plus, wouldn't it be better to actually look at outcomes, do an outcome-based analysis, which is called comparative therapeutic analysis? Now, I'm not the only one pushing this, and a far better scientist than I, Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, I believe he's from Oxford, was the first time I saw that. He said, rather than investing so much money in finding a patented system or pill and then comparing it to a placebo, why don't we compare different therapies, even some that we can't measure all that well at this time, but know it exists? Over the years, I have tried to look broader at what the human body actually is. It isn't a machine. We can't reduce the human body to just systems, because all these systems talk to each other. You can't do something to the liver that doesn't affect your metabolism, your blood, your hormones, and everything. Everything is connected to everything else, and they all speak to each other. It's a balance. It's a balancing system that even goes to those things you can't measure at all. Your own stress level, your own belief in yourself, your own belief that you can cure yourself in many cases. I've always found it ironic that they always compare the pill to the placebo, and it only has to be a few points higher than the placebo, which is generally about 30%. The placebo is where these people have received what they think is a pill to either cure this disease or that disease, whether it's a headache or the growth of cancer. And they have the same effect as the people who are taking the actual pharmaceutical product. Now, wouldn't it be reasonable to look a heck of a lot more at the placebo and say, how does this work? That just the mind and its intention can have the same results as the pharmaceutical effect. I think it is something we should look at. I think it is very interesting that the mind can have that kind of control over the body. 30% ain't bad, and it should be looked at. There are many things we know that touch, we know that stress, we know that love, we know that hugging, all these have physiological effects, not just emotional effects. And there's a big mistake, I believe, in believing that which we cannot see or measure isn't real. Don't forget, for most of man's history, he said that the universe always was and always will be. And if it wasn't for two AT&T workers trying to get to understand the background noise of a satellite they were putting up, we would have never realized that there was a Big Bang and that we could actually age the beginning of the universe. And then when we created the Hubble telescope, we started to realize that the universe was expanding. So in fact, those that were the scientists and said the universe always was and always will be, they weren't right. they weren't right. And it was found by accident. So it is good to test other hypotheses. And that's what we always did do in early science. But today, we don't really do that. In our understanding of whether we actually have a climate change, man-made climate change problem, or we have a pollution problem. That's significant because one says, oh, we have to be managed, we can't do anything about it because we're destroying the climate, but there's not really enough proof to justify that. There's much more proof saying that we're in a cyclical situation, not so much a man-made situation. But on the other hand, I must be the first to tell you, because I'm a naturalist, that I believe we have a serious pollution problem and that we're not good stewards of this earth, regardless of whether we're going to change the world a 1 degree one way or 1 degree another way, or even half a degree. That's not as significant as the pollution that we're creating right now. It's a matter of stewardship. It's a matter of responsibility for generations in the future. So we're going to have some of these discussions, and I also will be producing, it looks like, an iPod, so you can get me on the go that way. And I guess with the YouTube, I'll be able to show you visually a little bit more about what life is like for me as I study mortality, as I study how we face mortality and how families can overcome loss of a loved one. So welcome along for the ride. Give me comments. I'll try to respond to many of them. You're sitting right now in my Sanctum Sanctorium. This is where I hide out, have a little peace. I'm generally up at 5 in the morning. That's when I start writing and that type of thing. So there is no season 4, but that only means things are changing and getting bigger and better. And my purpose, and the purpose of anyone who has influence, is to help those who have none. And that's what I'm endeavoring to do. One other thing that I'll be doing in this year is, we've already started it. It's an entity. I just need to make it grow. And that is it's a nonprofit, and it's a charity called the Coroner Cares. And the mission statement of that is to introduce into science and therapies sciences that would not normally get funding to do studies. And they will be comparative therapeutic studies. In other words, I want to find out if you say, well, yoga is so important because of this, that, or the other thing. Let's say in addiction. And I have a friend who's very involved with addicts in the process of meditation and yoga and breathing. He was an addict. His name is Tommy Rosen. He has a website. It's www.20.com. So it's www.20.com. And Tommy Rosen, and he is a former addict, and he wrote a book called Recovery 2.0. And he has a wonderful website. It's been a great help to many people who are addicted, not just to drugs, but to other addictive behaviors, from diet to pornography to love of money, all these things. And I've seen wonderful results. Nobody has done a control group study in this area because, number one, it wouldn't be funded, And number two, many people don't even know it exists because it's for that limited few that would A, be internet savvy, and B, would have an inclination or some support from others to try to take control of their own addiction. But that's what it has to be. It doesn't matter whether it's drugs or any other thing. You first have to recognize it, and then you have to understand that you're the one that can change your life and can lead yourself to better things. And this is a guide on how to do it. They provide guidance 24 hours a day, which is a beauty because there's webinars and all this other stuff. So there's always access to help at that website. So that's it for tonight. No more, there won't be a season 4. It's been wonderful to be with ID, wonderful people to work with. The fans are great, I love them, but there's a few things I have to do right now also, and that is this issue of addiction. I want to do this documentary and to expand research in multiple areas where the dead had told me we need to look at these areas and look at in a very broad way for better therapies than what we're doing right now because it isn't working. And I don't think I even need to tell you that. Worldwide, we know it's not working. We know that we're destroying microbiome in people. We know that GMOs have affected greatly our agricultural industry. We know that chemicals that we use to control weeds and insects and all that have ended up being harmful to our bodies. We know that we're not raising our animals properly. So those are the discussions we're going to have in the future. I hope to have guests on. I haven't figured out how to do that yet, but we'll be working on that. My tech skills are not high, but we'll make them better. And I think on the iPod part of it, I'll be working out of a studio close to here. So then I don't need to be the technician. I just need to talk. So have a great weekend.